He didn't ask for praise. He didn't record it for clicks. All he did was notice a hungry child outside the window. One plate of food. One silent act of kindness. And for that, they fired him. But what no one knew was who that child would grow up to become. The bell above the door jingled like it always did, half a second too late to matter, but just loud enough to cut through the quiet. Ethan barely looked up. He'd already memorized the sound of that bell after 2 years. It was sharp, tired, like the rest of the place. Daisy's diner didn't care much about appearances. The walls were lined with fake brick wallpaper, yellowed with time. The checkered floor had scratches that told stories no one remembered. The booths had duct tape where leather used to be, and the jukebox in the corner hadn't played a real song since 2017. But Ethan liked it that way. The regulars shuffled in like clockwork, old Mr. Baxter in his flannel shirt and fishing hat, always asking for black coffee and one slice of rye toast, unbuttered. Miss Lorna, who took her eggs scrambled, even though she was allergic and knew it. Teenagers after late-night shifts, truckers passing through, and the occasional lost tourist who thought they were stepping into a vintage Instagram spot. They weren't. Ethan moved between tables like a shadow. Not rushed. Not slow. Just efficient. He had that quiet, careful rhythm that only people with too much time and too little reward ever develop. His apron was clean. His shoes, not so much. He never smiled with his mouth, but sometimes, his eyes flickered with a kindness that no one noticed unless they were really paying attention. But that morning felt different. Not loud. Not urgent. Just off. He saw her before anyone else did. Tiny girl. Maybe 7, maybe 8. Hoodie too big for her body. Standing outside the diner window with her arms crossed, just watching. Not begging. Not crying. Just looking. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't nod either. He just stood there, quiet. Rick tapped his pen against a coffee-stained folder. You've been here a while, Ethan. Never caused problems. But this isn't how we do things. Then maybe I'm not how you do things, Ethan said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. But it stopped Rick cold. For a second, the only sound was the buzzing from the overhead light. Rick looked down. You're saying you want to walk? I'm saying if feeding a hungry child gets me fired, then maybe I already don't work here. He took off his apron. Folded it once. Left it on the desk. And walked out the same way he walked in, quietly. The diner kept humming without him. Orders still got yelled. Plates still clinked. The bell still jingled when people walked in. Nothing had changed. And yet, something had. Across the street, the little girl was gone. But in Ethan's chest, something stayed. That still, heavy gaze. That tiny nod she gave before walking away. It started raining by noon. Ethan sat on the bus stop bench, his coat pulled tight, jobless for the first time in 2 years. But he didn't feel regret. Not exactly. Just stillness. Like he was waiting for something else to begin. His phone buzzed. A message from his landlord. Another from the job board. Neither brought relief. But he didn't move. He just sat there, wondering what became of the girl with the tired eyes and empty hands. He had no idea. She wasn't gone. And someone else had been watching, too. The rain didn't stop that evening. It turned into one of those soft, steady drizzles that makes the city feel smaller, quieter, lonelier. Ethan walked home under a borrowed umbrella from a woman at the bus stop. She didn't say anything, just looked at his soaked shoulders and handed it over with a nod. He thanked her. Quietly. Like always. The streets were slick and empty. He passed shuttered storefronts, neon signs reflecting on wet concrete, and an alleyway that reeked of forgotten things. But halfway down Elm Street, he saw her again. The same little girl. She was curled up on the steps of an abandoned laundromat, hoodie soaked, arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes were half shut, but she wasn't asleep. She was listening. Listening the way kids listen when they've lived too much, too fast. Ethan slowed down. Stopped a few feet away. "You okay?" he asked gently. She didn't answer. He crouched to her level, just like he had that morning. The umbrella tilted awkwardly in his hand, trying to keep them both dry. Her eyes met his. Still quiet. Still cautious. "I don't bite," he said with the smallest smile. Still nothing. "I used to work at that diner across the street," he said. "Place with the checkered floor and bad coffee." Her eyes flickered. Recognition. "You were the one with the food," she finally whispered. He nodded. "You looked like you needed it." She looked away. He noticed the torn edge of a granola bar wrapper in her hoodie pocket. Probably her last meal for the day. Maybe yesterday too. "What's your name?" She hesitated. Then shook her head. "No name?" Ethan asked softly. "No name," she echoed. He didn't push. Instead, he pulled something from his own coat pocket, his last granola bar. Chocolate chip. Half melted from being in there all day. He held it out. "You want this?" She hesitated again. But her fingers reached out, slow, like she was stealing it, and clutched the bar. "Thanks," she mumbled. He nodded. "You got anywhere warm to sleep tonight?" She didn't answer. He didn't expect her to. Ethan looked down the street. The shelter on 9th had closed last month. The library kicked out anyone after 7 p.m. He didn't have much, but he couldn't walk away. "You hungry again?" he asked. She looked at him carefully. Like she didn't trust kindness. Like she'd been tricked before. Yeah. That was all. They found a small diner 2 blocks down. Not as grimy as Daisy's. A couple of booths, a tired waitress with a heart-shaped name tag, and a special for $5.99 that included eggs, toast, and soup. Ethan paid with crumpled bills and a few quarters. He made up a story about her being his cousin's kid. Visiting for a few days. The waitress nodded but didn't seem to care either way. They sat near the back. She didn't eat like a child. She ate like a survivor, fast, quiet, guarded. Ethan didn't touch his food. He watched the window instead, rain streaking down the glass in quiet lines. The city moved past them without noticing. He finally spoke. "Someone out there looking for you?" She shook her head. "You run away?" She didn't move. Just chewed slower. "I ran once," Ethan said. "When I was 17. Thought the world couldn't get worse than where I was. Turns out, it could. But also, it didn't stay that way." She looked up from her spoon. "You were alone too?" "Yeah," he said. For a while. Silence returned. Then finally, softly, she whispered, "They left me." Ethan didn't ask who. Parents? Foster system? Somebody who was supposed to care? It didn't matter. She looked down again. Her hands were shaking. Just slightly. "What should I call you?" he asked. She hesitated. Then murmured, "Nia." It might have been her real name. It might have been something she made up on the spot. But he nodded. Nia, he repeated. I like that. By the time they stepped out, the rain had stopped. The clouds split just enough to let the moon peek through. Ethan knew he couldn't take her home. His apartment building didn't allow guests without approval. He didn't have a spare bed. Heck, he barely had heat. But the 24-hour laundromat down on 5th, that was something. He walked with her, slow and careful. She said little. But her pace changed. Less hesitant. More, like she belonged next to him. They sat inside between rows of humming machines. Ethan used the last of his coins to warm up the dryer closest to them. Not for clothes. Just for heat. He gave her his coat. She curled up on the plastic bench. And for the first time, Ethan saw her close her eyes without flinching. She was asleep within minutes. It was nearly dawn when the noise came. Not loud. Just enough to break the moment. The laundromat door opened, and in walked a man in a suit. Sharp. Immaculate. Shoes that cost more than Ethan's rent. He paused when he saw them. Ethan stood up slowly, protective. His posture shifted, not aggressive, but ready. Didn't expect company, the man said lightly. Ethan didn't answer. You the kid's father? Ethan tilted his head. You with the city? The man smiled. No. I'm with someone more important. Nia stirred behind him. The man stepped closer. Too close. That little girl outside the diner yesterday, he said. You don't know who she is, do you? Ethan's heart thudded once. She's just a kid. The man's expression changed, just a flicker. Like a secret had just been exposed. She's more than that, the man said quietly. And the right people are looking for her. Ethan's hand subtly shifted toward the coat lying beside Nia. She said they left her. The man shook his head slowly. She doesn't know the truth. Not yet. Then. You gave her food. Took her in. That's brave. But also, very, very risky. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Who are you? The man didn't answer. He just left a card on top of the washer beside them. And walked out. Ethan didn't pick it up. Not yet. He looked at Nia, still asleep. Still small. Still wrapped in a coat too big for her. Whatever this was. It wasn't over. The sun was barely up when Ethan picked up the card. It was matte black, heavier than paper should be, with no logo. Just a name embossed in silver. Malcolm Virelli. Below it, a single phone number. No title. No company. No address. Nothing to explain who he was, or why he had appeared like smoke in the laundromat before dawn. Ethan stared at it for a long moment. Then slipped it into the pocket of his coat. Nia was still asleep, curled into herself on the plastic bench, wrapped in the same coat Ethan had draped over her. She looked younger like this, small, vulnerable, innocent. He sat back down beside her, elbows on his knees, and stared at the humming dryers. Something about that man's voice had stuck with him. It wasn't just the calm or the confidence, it was the certainty. Like he already knew how this story ended. And Ethan didn't like that. By noon, they were walking again. Nia had barely said a word, but her eyes were brighter now. She followed him a little closer. Didn't flinch when he reached into his bag for another granola bar. You sleep okay? He asked gently. She shrugged. Didn't dream. That's good? Sometimes. They turned the corner into a quiet part of town. Ethan had a friend who managed a supply store, no questions asked. If anyone would lend a blanket or a dry hoodie, it'd be him. But something about the street felt off. There was a black car parked at the curb. Tinted windows. Engine still running. Ethan slowed. A man leaned against the passenger side door, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding his eyes. "You sure this is safe?" Nia whispered. Ethan looked down at her. "No. But we're not hiding." They kept walking. The man didn't move. Didn't speak. But he was watching. Inside the shop, Ethan found an old friend, Marcus. He was tall, stocky, with a grin that used to be permanent, until life had worn it down into a cautious smirk. "You brought trouble with you, huh?" Marcus said the moment Ethan stepped in. "What makes you say that?" Marcus jerked his head toward the front window. Unmarked black car parked outside for 20 minutes. Guy in a $3,000 coat asking questions. Ethan didn't flinch. He give a name? Nope. Just said he was looking for a missing asset. Sound like anyone you know? Ethan glanced at Nia, who was pretending not to hear. "Just trying to keep a kid safe," he said quietly. Marcus sighed. "That's a full-time job these days." He tossed Ethan a folded blanket and a sealed pack of protein bars. "Take what you need. I'll delete the cameras after you leave." They found a place behind the old train station. Not much, just a covered bench beneath a rusted awning, hidden from the main road. Nia sat down first, curling up with the blanket. Ethan sat beside her. "Why do they want me?" she asked suddenly. He didn't lie. "I don't know." She looked up. "What if I did something bad?" Ethan looked her straight in the eye. "Then someone would have already tried to hurt you." She bit her lip. "You think I'm safe with you?" He didn't answer for a long moment. Then quietly, "I think you're safer than you were yesterday." The next morning, the city changed. Posters started going up. Missing child, reward. But the photo wasn't grainy. It wasn't weeks old. It was from 2 nights ago. Taken right outside the diner. The exact moment Ethan had handed her the food. Someone had been watching. Someone had planned this. He tore the poster down and folded it into his coat. Nia didn't need to see it. But as he turned to leave, a man stepped out from the alley. Not a cop. Not security. Same suit. Same cold eyes. But this time, there were 2 of them. "Don't run," one said. Ethan froze. Nia's hand reached for his instinctively. "We don't want her hurt," the taller man added. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then back off. You don't understand." "I understand enough. You're following a kid through alleys, tailing her like a criminal. Who are you working for?" The man stepped closer. "People with the power to make this go away. People who know what she is." Ethan's hand went to his pocket. "The card. Virelli sent you?" Silence. That was the answer. Ethan glanced at Nia. Then back at them. "You want her? Go through me." The taller man exhaled slowly. "We're not authorized for that." "Then you're not getting her." The men exchanged a look, and stepped back. Not retreating. Just waiting. That night, they slept inside the maintenance room of a locked park restroom. It wasn't warm, but it was dry. The walls muffled the sound of the outside world. Nia leaned against him as she fell asleep. Not on accident. Not out of exhaustion. On purpose. Ethan didn't sleep at all. By morning, the decision had been made. He couldn't protect her alone. Whatever this was, whatever game these people were playing, he was outmatched. He needed help. Real help. But the only person who might be crazy enough to give it was someone he hadn't spoken to in years. He pulled out his phone. One number. No name. He hit dial. The line clicked. Ethan? He took a breath. I need a favor. A pause. A low sigh. I figured you'd call eventually. She's just a kid. They're treating her like a target. The voice on the other end was gravelly, measured. That's because she is one. Ethan's stomach twisted. What do you mean? They'll never tell you the truth, Ethan. They don't work for any state agency. Not officially. Then who? They're private. Off books. And if they're involved, this girl's either connected to something big, or someone wants her out of the picture. Ethan felt cold. What do I do? You bring her to me. Can I trust you? The pause on the line stretched a little too long. You don't have anyone else. The card was burning a hole in his pocket now. And Nia was stirring beside him. Outside, the wind picked up. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. It wasn't just the tension, or the winter creeping in early this year. It was something else. Something Ethan could feel in his spine. Like eyes in the dark. He looked down at Nia. She was quiet, but not afraid. Not anymore. She had a kind of calm that didn't come from safety, but from already surviving the worst. They were walking toward the edge of the city now. Toward a small town an hour outside, where Ethan's last card was waiting. His name was Calder Finch. A man whose record didn't show up on government servers, whose location changed every 6 months, and whose debt to Ethan ran deeper than money. But to reach him, Ethan would have to do something he hadn't done in years, ask for trust. They caught a ride on a supply truck heading west. Ethan sat in the back with crates of old wires and discarded tech, holding Nia close for warmth. She finally asked, "Who are we going to see?" "A fixer," he replied. "What's a fixer?" Ethan hesitated. "Someone who knows how to hide the kind of people others want erased." She tilted her head. "Like you?" He chuckled. "No. I'm too loud." The town was called Lornhill. You wouldn't find it on most maps. 1 streetlight. 2 diners. A church that doubled as a library. And at the far end, past a junkyard filled with rusted satellite dishes and refrigerator doors, was a workshop with no sign. That's where Calder lived. When Ethan knocked on the steel-plated door, nothing happened at first. Then a voice crackled through the intercom. "You smell like trouble." Ethan smirked. "You always were sentimental." A moment later, the door buzzed open. Calder Finch looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. Which, knowing him, was probably accurate. His eyes were sunken, his hair tied back into a messy knot, and his hands stained with grease. But when he saw Nia, his expression changed. "This her?" Ethan nodded. "She's not what they think." "That's the problem, Ethan. No one agrees on what she is." He gestured them inside. The place smelled like solder and burnt plastic. Screens blinked on every wall, showing traffic cams, power grids, border crossings. "Whole network's been crawling lately," Calder muttered. "Someone's putting pressure on regional surveillance." "You stirred something." Ethan pulled the black card from his coat. Calder's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" "A man in a laundromat." "Was he wearing a charcoal suit?" Smelled like sandalwood and regret? That's the one. Calder didn't laugh. Instead, he took the card from Ethan's hand with a level of caution usually reserved for explosives. This isn't just a business card, he said. This is the business. Virelli doesn't hand these out unless something's being watched by very rich, very dangerous people. He looked at Nia again. She's not some lost orphan, is she? Ethan didn't answer. But that was answer enough. While Calder worked, Ethan sat with Nia in the corner of the room. She was flipping through a photo album Calder had left open. Pages full of people she didn't know. Smiling. Gone. Do you think they were all like me? She asked quietly. Ethan followed her eyes. Some of them, maybe. Then where are they now? He hesitated. That's what we're trying to find out. Hours passed. Calder ran face scans, heat maps, traced digital footprints, and used tech that didn't legally exist. Finally, he paused. There's a name that keeps popping up. Every file, every thread, same name stamped in the metadata. Ethan leaned closer. Whose? Calder typed it out on the screen. Project, Harborn. He turned. That mean anything to you? Ethan's face changed slightly. That's not a project. What then? It's a clearance level. Calder froze. That's not possible. No clearance level is tagged to public data. Exactly, Ethan said. Which means someone's leaking on purpose. They were being baited. Calder finally looked directly at Nia. What's the last thing you remember before the diner? She closed the album and sat very still. A hallway. Cold. White walls. People in masks. They were talking about my blood. Ethan sat forward. Do you remember what they said? She nodded slowly. They said I wasn't supposed to wake up yet. A silence dropped over the room like a weight. Calder stood. That's it. You can't stay here. Not anymore. If you're tied to that, there are only two ways this ends. You disappear, or you expose everything. Ethan didn't flinch. I'm not letting them erase a kid to cover up some secret. Then get ready to lose more than a job. Calder handed Ethan a small chip drive. It's not a lot. Just breadcrumbs. But if you can get this to someone who still believes in laws, hell, even the right journalist, someone might listen. And if no one does? Then burn it all down. They left Lornhill before sunrise. Calder watched from the doorway. I hope you're right about her, he said as Ethan turned to leave. I'm not, Ethan said quietly. But I'm sure they're wrong. They cut through back roads and crossed into another county by foot. Nia was quiet most of the way. But once, as they passed an abandoned farmhouse, she stopped and looked at him. Why are you still helping me? He didn't answer immediately. Then softly. Because someone should have helped me when I was your age. That night, they took shelter inside an old church. The pews were cracked, but the altar still stood. Nia lit a single candle. Ethan sat beside her on the floor. You scared? She asked. He exhaled. Every second. She leaned against him. I'm glad it's you. But peace wouldn't last. Because 10 miles away, a call was made. A voice answered on the other end. The same cold, calculated tone. Go ahead. Don't engage. Just track. And if they get too close to the city? The voice didn't hesitate. Then we bring in Protocol Black. Even the clinking of silverware felt muted, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Outside, The rain had started, soft at first, just a gentle tapping against the window panes. But it picked up as the minutes passed, thick drops streaking the glass, blurring the view of the parking lot. Inside, James sat at the back booth, shoulders hunched, hands wrapped around a chipped white coffee mug. The hot liquid had long gone cold, but he hadn't touched it in a while. He wasn't here for coffee. He was here for time. Time to think. Time to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. Just yesterday, this place had felt like a second home. Now, it felt like a crime scene. He glanced around, the empty counter stools, the scattered salt shakers, the single napkin left on a table like someone had left in a rush. He imagined Lucy's laughter echoing through this space, the sound of her small shoes tapping the tile. But the sound was just a ghost now. Across the room, the door creaked open. A rush of cool air followed the woman who stepped in, early 60s, long beige coat, wide umbrella folded at her side. Her presence was quiet, but confident. She didn't glance at the menu, didn't hesitate. She walked straight toward him. "James Whittaker?" she asked. He stood, uncertain, but nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She extended a hand. "Charlotte Mercer. I work with the City Council's Outreach Division." James shook her hand, still unsure what was happening. "I'm sorry, I didn't call anyone." "No, but someone did," she replied. "A reporter named Maya. She mentioned your situation, the child, the termination. And she said you might not ask for help even if you needed it." James gave a half smile, then sat again. "That sounds like her." Charlotte took the seat across from him. She set a manila folder on the table, flipped it open. "Before we get into this, I want you to understand something," she said. "This isn't just about a job. What happened to you, what you did, struck a chord. Not with everyone, but with the right people. People who still believe in dignity. In decency." James blinked. He didn't know what to say. So he didn't. Charlotte continued, pulling out a small photograph. It was of Lucy, taken by Maya, a candid shot of the little girl standing just outside the diner, clutching the sandwich James had given her, a gentle smile on her face despite the rain and the cold. "This went viral," she said. "And when stories go viral, so do consequences." James leaned forward. "What kind of consequences?" She looked up. The diner's corporate franchise received over 10,000 complaints. Half a dozen sponsors threatened to pull local ad money. The regional manager? Gone. Effective immediately. James's lips parted, but nothing came out. "And that's not all," she said. "There's a man who runs a foundation on the north side of the city. Used to be a chef. Lost everything once. Got it back. He wants to meet you. Says you've got the kind of heart that kitchens are missing these days." James let that settle. It didn't feel real yet. "I didn't do anything special," he muttered. Charlotte tilted her head. "No. You just did the right thing when no one was watching." A silence fell between them, thick with the weight of what had just been said. Suddenly the door pushed open again. Maya stepped inside, umbrella in hand, camera bag slung over her shoulder. She looked around, spotted them, and made her way over. "You didn't tell him yet?" she asked, glancing at Charlotte. "I was getting there," Charlotte smiled. James frowned. "Tell me what?" Maya reached into her coat and pulled out a thin envelope, placing it in front of him. "Open it." His fingers trembled slightly as he slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a printed letter, formal, with the city's seal at the top. He read it slowly, twice, before looking up. "They're offering me a position?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Charlotte nodded. Community kitchen supervisor. A pilot program, launching next month. You'll be managing a team, helping distribute meals across the district. Salary. Benefits. Respect. James couldn't speak. His throat tightened, his vision blurred. He lowered his gaze. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Maya said softly. A pause. Then James nodded. Not with arrogance. Not even excitement. But with something deeper, gratitude. Relief. A small, sacred kind of hope. Later that evening, as they left the diner together, James paused at the doorway. He looked back once. The place that had tossed him out had also become the very ground where his redemption began. Funny how life works. Outside, the storm had passed. The sky was clearing, clouds parting just enough for the moon to peek through. James pulled his coat tighter, then turned toward the sidewalk where Charlotte and Maya waited. Down the street, a small figure stood near the alley entrance. Lucy. She was standing with her brother now, the boy Maya had tracked down earlier. He held her hand tightly, protective and proud. Behind them, a woman stepped out of a car and approached. Lucy ran to her mother, and was wrapped in an embrace so pure it made James stop walking for a moment. Maya came up beside him. We found her family. Her mom was in a shelter, trying to get back on her feet. James smiled softly. I was never meant to be her forever. Just her bridge. And sometimes, bridges are the most important part of the journey. A week later, the diner reopened under new management. The old signs were still there, the neon still buzzed faintly in the window, and the coffee still burned if you left it sitting too long. But something was different. The air didn't feel so tight. The servers smiled a little more freely. The walls, once lined with warnings and memos, now held community flyers, small photos of local families, and one framed headline from the city paper. Waiter fired for kindness offered leadership role, sparks citywide change. James stood on the other side of the street that morning, hands in his jacket pockets, watching. He had no desire to go inside. Not out of anger. That had passed. He just knew his time there was over. The place had been a chapter. Now, he was writing something bigger. He turned to walk away when a familiar voice called from behind. James. He turned to see Lucy, sprinting across the sidewalk in a pair of bright yellow rain boots. Her brother trailed behind, a little slower, a little more cautious. Lucy barreled into James with a hug that nearly knocked him off balance. He knelt to her level. You're supposed to be in school, he teased gently. She grinned. Field trip got cancelled. Teacher said the roof leaked. Her brother, Marcus, gave James a respectful nod. The boy still didn't talk much, but his eyes spoke plenty. You doing okay? James asked. Marcus gave a small thumbs up. Then, after a moment, he pulled something from his pocket, a folded sheet of paper, hand-drawn with colored pencils. On it was a picture, Lucy, her mom, Marcus, and James. Above it, in crooked handwriting, "Thank you for seeing us." James stared at the drawing, his throat tight. I didn't do that much, he said, mostly to himself. Lucy shook her head. You gave me food. And you saw me. That word echoed. Saw. He glanced back across the street at the diner. A new manager stood inside, chatting with an elderly man, a young server laughing behind the counter. The world kept spinning. But something had shifted. He felt it. Later that day, James stepped through the doors of a building that smelled like freshly cut wood and lemon cleaner. The sign outside read, North Ridge Community Kitchen. Below it, in smaller letters, a project for people, not profits. Inside, Maya stood beside a whiteboard, checking off names from a volunteer list. Charlotte was in the back with the staff, reviewing food delivery schedules. 2 teenagers were unpacking crates of apples. James took a breath. This was his now. His kitchen. His mission. His second chance. Ready for orientation? Maya asked, walking up to him. He smiled. I think I've been training for this my whole life. She handed him a clipboard. We've got 300 families registered. First meal service is next Monday. You'll be coordinating 22 volunteers, 4 cooks, and probably putting out more fires than I can warn you about. James nodded. Sounds perfect. As the day wore on, he moved through the building like he'd always belonged. He helped unpack canned goods, checked refrigerator temps, even helped one of the cooks test recipes. Every minute felt full. Every action felt like it mattered. That night, he stayed late. Long after the others had left, he sat alone at the prep counter, sipping from a mug that actually had hot coffee in it this time. The silence was different now, peaceful. Earned. He reached into his wallet and pulled out an old receipt. On the back was scribbled the note Maya had written him that day she found him outside the diner. Don't let the world convince you your kindness was a mistake. He pinned it to the corkboard above the sink. Not because he needed a reminder, but because someone else might. The next morning, a surprise waited for him at the front door. A man in a crisp suit, mid-50s, thin mustache, stood with a clipboard and a strange smile. You're James Whitaker? Yes? The man handed him a sealed envelope. From the board of directors. Open it when you're inside. And just like that, he turned and left. James brought the envelope inside, still dusted with dew from the morning air. He slid it open and pulled out a document, several pages long. It was a grant. Not just a donation, a grant. Backed by 3 local philanthropists and matched by the city. Enough money to run the kitchen for 2 years. Enough to expand. Enough to change hundreds of lives. He sank into the nearest chair, reading each line twice, then 3 times. At the very bottom, typed in bold. This grant is made in recognition of those who feed others, not because they have plenty, but because they remember hunger. His hands trembled slightly. He thought of his mother, how she used to save scraps so he could eat seconds. He thought of Lucy, the way she held that sandwich like it was made of gold. He thought of every customer who left more than they took. He thought of the day he was fired. And then he thought of the day everything turned. That night, a dinner was hosted at the kitchen to celebrate its opening. Community leaders attended. Local musicians played. The smell of roast chicken and baked bread filled the room. Children laughed in the hallway. Strangers sat together, shoulder to shoulder, breaking bread. James stood near the back, unnoticed, watching it all unfold. Until someone tapped a spoon against a glass and called for quiet. A short woman with silver hair stood at the center of the room. I just want to say, she began, that I've lived in this neighborhood 43 years. I've seen a lot. But I've never seen what I see now, people coming together because of one small act of kindness. One man saw a hungry child and said, "Here. Eat." That moment rippled through our city. She turned to James, her eyes shining. You reminded us what community means. A soft wave of applause followed. It wasn't loud. But it was warm. Honest. James bowed his head, humbled. As the music resumed and laughter filled the room, he stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The air was cool. The stars were beginning to blink into the sky. And for the first time in a long time, James smiled not because he was surviving, but because he was living. Kindness had cost him a job. But it gave him a calling. And that made all the difference.